Hey YouTube, we're back on the ASH26. Where we last left off, we were just removing more material here to try to make a clearing so that we could do this. We want these flaps to go down. Of course, we need to reattach this monocoat. And the big question mark right now becomes, how do we handle this? Obviously, we have different options, and what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to make these two surfaces here so that we can collapse this down. But it's proven to be a real pain in the neck to try to smooth it down to the extent that we can reattach that there. At which point, I don't know exactly how I'm going to close this off, but some sort of material is going to go over it so that it doesn't look like it's open like this. But anyway, that's where we left off, and mostly it's just carving and fine work, trying to get things to fit, to close, you know. Basically, I just keep taking material off like this until I get to the point where it's going to fit. And the glue that was used on this by the manufacturer is very strong. And while that's not a problem when you're wanting the plane to stay together, it turns into a problem when you're trying to take it apart. Because it's been very difficult to get these components to separate. But basically that's the drill, that's what I've been doing. And then I did that for a few minutes after the last video, just to spare you guys the extreme boredom of watching the same thing again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically, I really need this outside lip right here, this area, to taper to almost nothing, so that when I glue it down it's tight, but then also that makes this nice little clean pocket in there, and we can fill that with CA and then just close this down, and that becomes a pretty sturdy joint then. That'll strengthen the flap since we've removed some of the material, but it's also going to keep that tight so that when we actuate the flap down, it's got room to collapse to the downward sweep. Now the other option is we could just cut this whole thing off, but I think that's going to look crappy. It will definitely allow it to go down a lot more. And really that's what we're after, is being able to deploy the flaps down as far as possible. What would be really cool is if I could figure out a way to keep it so that this would be like that. That'd be awesome. Because then it would just be the super clean look. But I just don't see that happening. It's far too complicated for this project, for the size of the plane and the control surfaces that we have. Remember that we don't have as much deflection in this control surface because we had to share it with the on-off control. But the more I look at this, the more I think I'm going to end up probably about where we are anyway, regardless of what I choose. And so I'm tempted to just cut this thing off and be done with it, because then this would be gone and I would end up with my flap that's going to be the right dimensions on the end, which is where we need it to look right. So I'm going to think about that for a minute, come right back. Okay, so just in studying the way that all this stuff lines up, I'm thinking that I may be able to cut about half of this off, right down the middle. And what that'll do is that'll go straight down into this void here, and it'll make a nice smooth transition. into this area here, right at the tip of my finger. And then that'll make it so that we can collapse this flap really far, but we have this nice clean taper. And then we'll probably have to sand it a little bit more. But I think that's the way to go. That might be the most beneficial way to do this. So I think I'm going to work on that right now. So I just need to cut this very carefully. If I can cut it in a way that the monocoat stays intact, that'd be really cool. But I don't think I'm holding my breath on that. Okay, I'm gonna go real easy here at the end. And my cut sucked there for a second, so I'm gonna just... Okay, so I'm gonna lift this up, get my thumb out of the way, and then just slice it through. Okay, so now I want to see if I can split that in half so as to save that piece. So now while I was paused, I went ahead and started up my iron to get the iron warmed up. And that's going to help us to reattach this monocoat that's kind of come free a little bit. Okay, so that split that wood in half, which is what we wanted to do. So now it's just a matter of trying to separate that from the monocoat. And you'll notice it tapers a little bit, and that's fine, I guess. Or we'll find out if it's fine or not. Okay, so I'm just trying to pop this off of the monocoat without damaging anything, which would be ideal, because I can just reattach it down to the wood when we're all done with this. Just kind of riding my finger in between them. Well, that could have worked worse. Here we have this little piece, which, if we were pressed, we could take and use that to get back into this area here to fill that void in. Should be kind of nice, so we'll hang on to that obviously for now. We could also just fill it in with some other material. But we got away with that pretty clean. That's surprising. Okay, so now if we were to fold this down, okay, then that would allow us to, well, you know what? Let's just heat it up. Well, I'm trying to think. Should we just try to collapse it down, or should we glue that down? Kind of hard to say. Looks like it's somewhat separated anyway. But as you can see, guys, look at that. We have good flap deflection now. So I think that'll do the trick for now. I wonder if I can stuff this back into that void right underneath where the other piece is now, just to see if it'll accept that much material in that spot. Yeah, that definitely stops the deployment of the flaps a little bit, which doesn't really surprise me, but it's definitely not what we're going for. So you see we're a little bit thinner here than we are down here. And I don't think that's going to be a huge issue, but it might cause us some grief, I think. I'm going to try to just taper this a little bit more. Alright, so now we can stick that back down if we wanted to. I think honestly, I'm not really that concerned about the way that it looks on the inside of a flap mechanism, because it's going to be closed most of the time, and then the rest of the time it's going to be closed even tighter. So if I just put a little bit of CA down this channel and just close that down, just put some CA down in there and fold it down. If it looks bad, we can always just change the way it looks by redoing it or adding different material. For now, this will hold everything together. Okay, so this is medium CA with the gap filling properties. Putting a pretty liberal dose on there. I'm just running back through to make sure it's got a little bit in all the areas. Now, normally I want to try to keep kicker off of this adhesive back stuff, but I don't think we have a whole lot of choice. We're going to have to do it this way. Okay, so we're just going to push that down in quick and try to keep the film from sticking. See, and I can feel the heat through it. Okay, so that definitely held on to it. So now we can go and peel this up where it's wanting to stick, a couple of different spots, and then we'll just fill this in with CA. Now the gap is there. So let's just double check we can get a full collapse on this into the down position. Are we hitting anywhere? We're hitting a little bit on the top here. Let's try to squish that back. Yeah, that's a pretty good amount of deflection. That's about what we were getting. Okay, good. So now that we know we've got that where we want it, for now, I'm going to go ahead and, sorry, I got that stuck down there a little bit. So we'll just pull this open like that. We'll just go ahead and fill in the gap. And this is going to make it a lot stronger, for one thing. And for another thing, it's going to make it a smoother transition. After all, this is gap filling CA. We're not trying to hold the monocoat on at all. We don't care about that. This end down here needs a little bit more. So we'll just let that work for a second. And we might do one more little dose right there. Okay. We're going to let that sit for a second in an upright position. Clean the tip. We can go right back to what we were doing. Ooh. Okay, so now that that's set up, you can go ahead and take a look at this monocoat, getting that set back down. It's crazy how hot it is over here from all that chemical reaction. I'm just wondering if I need to wipe that down with alcohol. I probably do. I'll get some alcohol here. Get it soaked. Now we're just gonna sneak that up along the little edge of the monocoat there. Okay. That should be fine for what we're doing. So the iron's hot. Gave it the proverbial smell test for temperature. Now, I want to do the underside too, but I got to do this side first. That's because this is more critical in terms of its placement. Got a big bubble down here. I would like to work that out. Yep, got it. So now once we get this stuff hot, that'll allow it to bond back to the material. But then once we let it cool, then that will shrink back just a little bit, hypothetically. And we kind of knew when we went into this that we were going to have to put a little tape joint on top of it. So as you can see, we got a couple of pass-throughs, which is not the end of the world. It looks fine from the top. Like I said, if I really care, I'll just recover the section of the wing or the whole wing. I don't want to recover anything though. I hate doing it. Okay, so now this part should be fairly straightforward. I'm just going to heat it up and get it to stick if it'll stick. My hope is it will. And then these little edges here, we gotta do these edges too, so they wrap around and get a little bit of adhesion. It's kind of surprising when you're on a flat surface like this how much overlap you don't need. You would think you would need a ton, but you really don't. I mean, it holds up better if you have more overlap, of course. So it's always a good idea to have some more. Okay, so this will just basically allow us to do some more testing. Now this little chunk, we'll probably end up buying a small piece of touch-up monocoat, and we'll wrap all this stuff on the inside, so it'll cover up like a 1/4 inch all the way up to the bottom of this surface. So when we're all said and done, it'll be prettied up. But for the moment, it'll be fine for what we're doing. We're just trying to kind of keep it from flopping around in the wind is all. Okay, it's still warm, but I need to heat this back up. And I always unplug it from the wall. That's why I set it to such a high temperature. Because it's cooling down, it's not working as good. Okay, so now that that's re-secured, you can see that we have basically our normal play now. So now the only thing we've got to do to get this mechanism finished is to do a tape joint, and then we'll before we fill any of these gaps, which I've got 2 ideas for filling this. One is just using balsa wood scrap from the cut itself and just literally filling them into these holes with gap filling CA, and then just sanding it down smooth again, which will be fine. The other option is to actually, I was thinking about using cotton, filling it in with cotton. It makes it really strong and it's super light, and then CA. But you can see we maintained that really clean top, which is what I was after, with the exception of, you know, the fact that we've got these couple of really small holes pass-throughs where the blades had passed. And I don't think you're going to notice it that much. So now we have to get our hinge tape out, which I have to remember where that is now. Okay, so we're going to use this hinge tape. This stuff is expensive. It's called Blenderm, but DeBro markets it as well. And ironically enough, the DeBro brand is cheaper than the medical brand. So if you're looking to try to find this as a medical brand tape, it's actually cheaper from DeBro in the hobby market. I don't understand why that is, but meter for meter, it's cheaper. So might as well get it from the hobby people. Give them our money. That being said, this stuff's super easy to use. I am going to clean with alcohol the area that's going to be applied to, because it's, like I said, it's fairly expensive, so I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to use some alcohol here. Just clean it really good right in this whole area. Probably what we'll do is we'll try our best to just get it right here. But if we have to overlap, that's not a big deal. We'll take the knife and cut it down the seam. We got a little bubbling there, so what we're going to do is we're going to hit that with the heat, get that straightened out. So we'll get that heated up. Take out those bubbles. Okay, so we're just gonna get this stuff all nice and tidied up before we, one last time. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna plug this back in because there's a good chance we'll need to use that again. Cap off the alcohol. Okay, so now we want to let this cool for just a second. As you can see, our surface is much better looking now. It's not perfect, guys, but it's very good. Okay, so now, like I said, this stuff, you don't get a lot of it either, so I don't want to waste it just for the simple fact that I don't have that much of it. I want to try to get a little bit of, like about a half and half shot. one half on the airplane side and one half on the control surface side. So in this case we're talking about the wing. So and I want to cut this just a little bit long because it is a little stretchy, and I want to try to reapply this last little bit if I can do it without screwing it up. This stuff is super sticky. So okay, here goes nothing. Trying to push it right into the hinge. Okay, now I'm going to pull this tight, and I'm going to pull the control surface out as much as I can. I'm going to let it rest down. Just dang it, just a little bit too long. It's really hard to be exact on it. I'm just going to pull the control surface as I push the hinge tight. Okay, so now I'm going to open up the flap. I'll just trim this last little teeny bit. Hopefully I can rip that off, which I did. Okay, so that'll actually work really nicely to keep that hinge in a strong, it'll strengthen the hinge a lot, actually. See? And we can still bring that thing down and get good deflection. Okay, so now that we have the blender tape on there, we're getting close to the end of this video, but I'm going to try to get as much done as I can before we run out of time. Obviously we need to have a servo in here at some point, so we have to discuss the options for pockets. And what I mean by that is we're going to obviously mimic this closely, but this came with the plane, so we'll try to make something real similar. And it's not hard to do. We're just going to cut a square opening approximately the size of the servo, and then I'll make a plastic cover that will then be applied. And so I'll just look through my plastic bottles and different things like this. This would probably make a really good cover. It'd be very similar to this stuff, and it's actually a better, closer match to the color than the color of the factory ones. So we can use that to make our servo covers. And what's so critical about the servo covers on these wings is that the servo covers are actually what the servo mounts to. And then this was like I don't know, it's like vitamins or fiber pills or something like that. So we'll actually just make that shape here in a little bit, and make sure you clean out whatever residue's in here first. Okay, so guys, if you watch my control setup, I did some funny things to get this Lemon RX work without losing our gear channel. So we have stabilization. We can turn stabilization on and off, and basically it works pretty nice. And then of course we've got our two servos, one for each wing. But right now they're going to go the same direction, so we're just going to put one way and the other one the other way so that the output's the same, rather than using a servo signal reverser, just because I think it's going to be a waste of space and weight. So now we have to kind of make our final determination on exactly how big we need to make the opening. And this wire can chase along wherever we need it to. Obviously it's going to come out the same spot where the servo wires come out for the aileron. So I was thinking we would come in something like this, and about here. Now we've got this rod here that we'll have to deal with, so I may have to trim off some of these tabs, and that's totally fine with me. But we've also got this other we have this other spot where the rod's going to come in, and that rod's going to be accepted to hold the wing on, which actually, before I get too far ahead of myself, I better make sure we slide on here okay. Okay, so let's just double check this real quick. This could be a bit of a bummer. Yeah, See, we're okay. We're going in just fine. So that's always nice when the battery gets pulled out like that. Just don't panic and do something stupid and break something. Okay, cool. So you guys get the idea. We're not going to be able to finish that on this video, but for now, good progress. We're getting there, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.